Thank you so much, Arun, for your love and kindness. My dear well-wishers, there are divided views about the happening of GST. That's the precise point, the meeting point or the melting point. So, the people, the school of thought which has apprehensions about GST, catalogs the following grounds to say GST is chaotic, GST will fail, GST will lead us to more misery, and GST is anti-business. What are those reasons? Reason one, it's their case when it comes to commodity taxation or service taxation, we are either used to a tax by the central agency, namely the parliament, even in direct taxes or corporate taxes, company law, income tax law. Then you come to Central Sales Tax Act. Then you come to local levies, state enactments putting you the VAT, putting you different additional duties, etc., etc. So their cases, either union levies the tax, or the state levies the tax, or in the case of central sales tax, it's a union levy implemented by the state agency. So there has not been much of a confusion. Now you are suggesting both the agencies to work together. Will this experiment work? That's their first ground of challenge. Second, it's their case to say, this is the most complex formatted law. All of you have been filing just 2 returns a year for service tax and 12 returns a year for your state VAT Act. Now you have to do more than 3 to 4 returns a month for each of your states. So, very complex matrix, unimaginable burden, workload, and this is going to produce only chaos. And therefore, why GST? So, a technology-driven law is found faulted with to say that this is going to generate only confusion and chaos. It's the second objection they raise. But the third, it's their case to say, at least post 2000, see, we have been earning all our fortunes prior to 2000 in arguing either a classification dispute or a valuation dispute. And post 2000, we have been earning our fortunes arguing SENVAT disputes. So these are the 3 greenfield areas where we pocketed all the wealth from each one of you, the best of our abilities. But post 2000, there has not been much of rate issue because we slowly tended towards a uniform rate of taxation, at least in central excise and in customs in major areas. And therefore, they now say you have 5 rates for goods, 0, 5, 12, 18, 28. So this is going to open the Pandora box once again. Much of your time will be wasted in debating your rate war. And therefore, this is anti-trade. This is the third objection. Fourth, they say, now the cost of compliance, you had been filing just 2 returns and 12 returns a month. Now you have to multiply it several times and you have to outsource it. So those companies are going to punch data for you. Will they start charging you per line entry? And therefore, every return it multiplies, and therefore, the cost of compliance is going to go very high, disproportionately high. And therefore, this is not good for the trade. Fourth reason. And the last one, we also say, why retain this threshold exemption of 20 lakhs, 1.5 crores, etc., for the dealers, 50 lakhs compounding? If you allow these to exist, this only multiplies evasion for husband, wife, son, son-in-law, daughter, daughter-in-law, sambandhi. You start multiplying the same business through multiple forms and avatars, and therefore you continue to remain within the threshold, and therefore you are going to only promote evasion by propagating this GST. These are the 5 Panchasutras, we can say, in saying that GST is anti-trade. Is it so? That's the question. Is it so? Now let's take one after the other. I think I can tell you out of my experience after going through different courts. Last 10 to 12 years, we have spent 40% of our litigation time in arguing before courts on the very same transaction as to whether it is a sale or a service liable to VAT or a service tax, called the dual levy. Let me just give you two examples. Software. All of you should be suffering this handicap, whether you buy it for your company as a licensed right or you buy it as your individual consumer of a Microsoft Windows. When you buy a software, please see your invoice. If you are in the habit of seeing it, you will be inflicted with a VAT and also a service tax simultaneously. When Supreme Court thrice have said, not once, thrice have said, sale excludes service and service excludes sale, a transaction can suffer any one of these two taxes, not both. When you visit a restaurant today, when you come out to pay the bill, please see the bill. You will find an infliction of VAT and also a service tax on the same transaction. For the same food you consume, you pay two taxes. I can multiply this into many. So, these 10 years, there has been so much confusion of overlapping. We are now talking of central agency taxing central tax, state agencies taxing state tax. There is no confusion at all. Why you bring two people together? It's like bringing cotton and fire together. It will only catch up. That's the apprehension. We have been seeing, they have been coming together and inflicting it on the industry for the last 1 decade on several critical issues, which is all pending in courts. I have myself succeeded in Karnataka High Court thrice on software to say it's a service. And still, industries couldn't implement. It's a High Court judgment. Appeal pending in Supreme Court, no stay. But you are still suffering both the taxes. So, dual levy has been there even prior to GST. The interference of both the agencies on the same subject matter. Therefore, I don't see that as a reason to oppose GST as anti-trade. Instead, now, what are they doing? What are they attempting to do? It is, see, the presumption that it is a dual levy is partially correct, partially incorrect. Partially correct because two agencies are involved. Partially incorrect if you presume that there are two taxable events. There are no two taxable events. The design of Article 246 capital A is so unique and so beautiful in the Constitution. It's a unique creation. You don't find it in any part of the Constitution, this creation. It says, both Parliament and State shall levy a goods and service tax. So, on supply of goods, the moment a supply takes place, there is a simultaneous levy. The taxable event is only one, supply. Because we are a federal structure, the money goes to two agencies, the union and the state, in an agreed proportion. The taxable event is not two. We have suffered taxable event of 5 taxable events in a goods transaction. You have a manufacturing tax, you have an import tax, you have a sales tax, you have an entry tax, you had an octroi. You are ready to suffer multiple taxation on commodities for long, long years. Now somebody is trying to integrate it to say only one taxable event, that is supply, and both agencies will share it on an agreed formula, which formula has been put into place. So, is it anti-trade? That's the first thought process. I just want to leave it to you to think and ruminate over. So I don't think so that when multiple taxations have existed, this is an era where it is all collapsed into one taxable event. That's a far-reaching effort. I think we should commend whoever has done this effort over a period of time. over a period of time, has reached this climax after a lot of difficulties unstraight. So this is the first objection. I feel this could be a possible counter. Technology. Let's understand who is fraught with these consequences. If you have a business only in one state, you don't have a problem. It doesn't affect you at all. If you have business in multiple states, you must be having a stature of an MNC, either an Indian MNC or an MN subsidiary of an overseas MNC. Please touch your hearts and tell me, don't you prepare a very complex MIS every month? One. Have you not done your work for the case of treaties in the case of cross-border transactions? Have you not done it in the past? Have you not done in this last 10 years a complex bookkeeping called the transfer pricing for the last 1 decade? Are you not used to it? Have you not done it? In my opinion, transfer pricing, I have been arguing this for the past 1 year, 1 decade in different courts. It's the most subjective law I have ever come across. Anybody can throw their hat and their perspective, it will sail through. Have you not been maintaining books for that? Because there is a mandate. It's a compulsion. So, when you have arranged your business affairs in the last 1 decade to meet with global requirements, to meet with your regulatory requirements, to meet with your tax requirements for the parliament. Now what are they saying? See, this law has to be driven only through technology. Otherwise it will fail. It will fail. It will simply croak. Fall flat if technology fails. See, that's one session. Giri has been planning it in every meet. It's very critical. We understand apprehension state has, if you punch, it takes 7 minutes to type, put one invoice into the system. Whereas if an ASP or somebody does it, they do it in 7 seconds because their bandwidth is huge. So outsourcing is a compulsion to ensure that you don't take the burden on yourself. So this is the costs of compliance, which is one of the objections which they take, which we will deal with. So aligning with technology, see, there are 2 sides to it. At least I can tell you. I've been arguing cases for the e-commerce industries across India on various transactions. Today, e-commerce industries has a business presence of only 6 to 7%, and it's growing. But remember, the heart of e-commerce sale is only sale of cell phones. 60% of their market is only mobile phones. Imagine a scenario prior to e-commerce transactions. Last point retail sale of phone has always been only sold in black. 8 out of 10 phones would have been sold only in black. But once you get into the e-commerce transaction, our children start swiping our card, not their card. Unmindful, you will get a shock in your mobile saying that your son or a daughter has swiped the card and every week or every third day to buy something. But these transactions get captured. So, advent of technology in the long run is going to eliminate evasion at its roots. You now can't buy cell phone if you want an e-commerce transaction in black. It's not possible. So your cell phone transactions are duly accounted for, at least that 7% or 8% market which they are talking about. All the dealers in the respective state oppose an e-commerce transaction essentially for this reason. Retailers, there's a huge objection supported by the government because retailers don't want e-commerce transaction because they are not able to sell it on invoices. So technology eliminates evasion. That's the advantage of technology. Now, are we to oppose it, saying that you are driving this law through technology? Formative years are going to be very painful. I'm not denying that fact. But merely because formative years are going to be painful, are we to say that this is going to therefore be considered as anti-trade? So this is the third objection I thought I should deal with. Now come to classification and rates. All of us have fought these disputes in the past, not because of multiple rates. There were two absurdities in the approach of the governments at that point of time. They will tax a huge boiler, whole boiler at 10%, and the parts of boiler at 20%. And you know, a boiler can weigh anywhere between 20 tons to 900 tons. And therefore, if you are going to put shipments in 90 lorries of a boiler, the government will immediately issue a notice and say, these are all parts of boiler, pay 20%. So these are all the types of disputes we have had prior to 2000. And the second type of disputes where the same product will be exempted based on end uses. Copper sulfate used for agricultural produce is exempt. Copper sulfate used for copper is liable to duty. So the same source will import. So you'll be tempted to invoice it for an agriculturist and try it for use in manufacturing copper, because it's end use based. So these were the confusions which produced litigation, not your plain rates. Now see, in this 1200 items, how many items are overlapping? Where is the confusion where it could be here or there? You can count your numbers. And if there is any, please approach. For example, we are fighting straight away one matter referred to the ministry day before yesterday, the case of retreating tire. Retreating tires were not manufacturing activity prior to GST. They are now a supply. So no excise duty on that. So there was a huge difference in pricing between a retreated tire and a new tire. Now both retreated tire and new tire are at about 28%. The difference between both of them is just 1,000 rupees. So this industry will get killed if you are going to bracket and place them at par with new tire. Government is ready to listen. So if you have an issue on hand, take it. But don't generalize it to say different rates means for rest of your life till cows return home, you will be fighting a classification dispute. It's a tall statement. And the last objection is this threshold exemption. I will share you an episode which I faced in my life. Somebody from Tirupur met me 20 years back when I was a young lawyer with some 6-7 years of practice. And he said, sir, you had that 1 crore, 1.5 crore excise turnover. Sir, I have exhausted myself. I have exhausted it through my wife's, to my son, daughter-in-law, some 6-7 units is managed. So all this is over. Because 3 M's, money, machine and manpower, all this is separate. Now I still want to perpetuate it, so what should I do? So I was suggesting, I don't think there is an option other than repeating the course once over again. Better get married again and start the process. And I met him after 1 year. Then I just casually asked him, how did you hope the advice is carried out? He said, yes, of course, sir, in parts. So I thought, okay, the man foolishly has started one more unit in his wife's name or in his son's name and he's going to get into trouble. He said, no, I didn't start the unit, though I have married somebody else after 1 year. So I followed that portion of the advice and not this portion. So this has been there ever since these laws were there, threshold. But today, the scenario is not that. Ask somebody in the threshold. They are all meeting, everybody is meeting their consultants to say, how do we get registered and how do we hook ourselves into the GST? They don't want to be left out. In your supply, see, this is a supply tax, not an excise tax, not a service tax, not a sales tax where disjointed. It's a single composite levy. So from top to bottom, unless you are linked, then you will be thrown out of the league. So this is a disincentive. To remain within the threshold exemption is a disincentive. You're not going to prosper. You're not going to progress by multiplying units. That theory may not hold water, is what I feel at this point of time. Therefore, the objections raised that GST is anti-trade looks at a peripheral level fine, but if you look at it at a very deep penetrative level, doesn't look to be sustainable. Let me close it with this. You should really compliment GST for the following reasons. A, political. We are a federal setup with politicians having irreconcilable political differences across the country. And 20 years, we should not credit one particular government or one particular person for this GST. 20 years of hard labor by various governments at different points of time, ruling the states and the center, have always thought above their political gains that something to meet with in a common trade platform. So it's a milestone achievement politically is the first winning score. 2, Constitution. The creation of Article 246 is, there is lack of time when we find a time to talk on a constitution, I want to deal with this. It's one of the finest articles. See, in any center-state relationship in the constitution, you will have to involve the governor or the president. That is how the constitution is framed. There's no such, it's a direct participation by both the federal partners. It's a unique creation in the constitution. 3, Judicial. I'm certainly upset about the 9-bench judgment, which was an occasion at a time where they could have penetrated and supported this Part 13 and supported GST, even though it was argued. The minority has dealt it in extenso, whereas the majority has allowed state-centric federalism to penetrate. And therefore, when political and constitutional has been supporting GST, judiciary has let us down through this 9-bench judgment. It is a judgment which requires a course correction. We only wish it goes to 11th judge at the earliest. Economical, the 4th reason. You will downsize rates at some point of time. You are going to gain on that in the long run. And final, practical. The practical field, you are going to suffer a lot of pain in the initial years, without a doubt. And therefore, who has to play the role for you? Trade bodies and GST council should come to some sort of a consensus. A GST council, which is now a constitutional body, must be preventive, must be remedial, and must be empathetic. And if it marks down, see, they're all recommendatory, I agree. But a recommendation by a GST council, when it comes to judicial review, will support a proper judicial conclusion by a court of law. And therefore, this promise of a GST deliverance, the best possible deliverance will happen only when there is a vibrant GST council, which has all the 3, preventive, remedial, and empathy, supported ably by the trade bodies. They have a huge role to play the initial 3 to 4 years to ensure that GST is in place as aspired by the lawmakers. Let's roll out for this day to the best of our abilities and discuss whatever is possible. It was a pleasure to talk to each one of you. Thanks, Giri, for inviting me. Thank you so much.